and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic
for
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and justice
and
for all.
justice.
Amen.
Okay.
Play ball.
Okay, so Dr. Sheboy, did you want to do should we do our discussion items first, or should we do the agenda first?
Well, let's do the discussion items first, if it pleases the board, because I want to make
Please,
sure that I
please.
can give the board information.
Okay, thank you very much.
So is it okay if I go?
Of course, yes.
Okay. So I did a presentation to the board, I want to say a couple of weeks back, but I guess it was 3 or 4 weeks back now, about our plan to start with higher risk fall winter sports. My whole seasons are messed up like most people's due to COVID and other things. But we put in place our protocols. They were far more rigorous than what the county had required. They were far more rigorous than what anybody else was requiring. And we implemented them because we felt that they were the best thing to keep our student athletes, as well as our coaches and our community, as safe as we can. We did acknowledge that they were pretty stringent as far as the requirements. We did acknowledge that there is absolutely nothing that will guarantee 100% safety, but we felt, or at least my recommendation along with Debbie Brand and Debbie Crow, we felt that the positive benefits of having our students get back to normalcy through some level of athletics, including that of higher risk winter sports, basketball, namely, and cheer, outweighed the potential risk. And I'm very pleased to report to the board that we had a very successful season. It's still going on, actually. There's a game right now, which is probably a lot of people not watching this will watch it later, but very successful season, very successful testing program. Can't thank Horizon Medical enough for everything that they did as far as working with our students. I know there was a delay in the beginning. That's going to happen when you try to get that many people to provide consent and not everybody does it, and that holds up the gums up the work, so to speak. But we tested over 600 times over the past 3 or so odd weeks, and our positivity rate was improbably low. It was 0%, and that is a testament to our coaches and our families, and certainly our student athletes, for doing what they knew that they needed to do in order to get back to playing higher risk sports. And we said at that meeting that we would come back today and that the board would consider, after hearing information from me or after having some questions that they want to ask of me, whether or not to accept my recommendation for fall 2 sports. I am ready to make that recommendation to the board. I believe that the protocols that we have in place are the best around. Debbie Crow has been around other schools and said that what we're doing is top notch compared to what some others are doing as far as keeping our student athletes safe. Questions come up all the time about spectators. Section 9 does not allow spectators for inside sports. So whether the board approves volleyball as a high-risk sport, which again is part of my recommendation, we will not be allowed to have spectators, so we would continue to live stream those contests. Keith and Tom Kinane have been great about working with us to try to make sure that our student athletes who are on the court have some level of fan experience, and even those people at home have a decent experience. I thank them for that. For outside sports, the section has defined or has allowed 2 spectators per student athletes. That is not our rule. That is Section 9. And I know that, I've heard some questions over the past couple of weeks of, do we support the spectators? We do. We support having spectators in a safe fashion, and I believe that the section is trying to be judicious as they're walking slowly into this, just like all of us. We do support that. And, somebody asks, questions, when do we vote? Well, Frank Shewa does not get to vote. We've been through that a couple times on athletics. But I will certainly say that, given certain protocols and things that we would have to put in place, we can safely have, or as safely as possible, have that number of spectators per student athlete. Schools are restricting that to home spectators. That's what we will ultimately be doing. But that is my recommendation. I feel that, Debbie Crow, Debbie Brand, Robin, all the coaches, and all of our student athletes and their families have worked tirelessly to make sure that this was successful, not just for their own season, but for the next season and the next season and every step that goes beyond that.
So can I ask a few questions?
You can ask as many questions as you want.
So the home spectators mean that when we go to an away, we're playing at Cornwall, our spectators can't go. But if Cornwall's playing here, we can have 2 spectators for each of our athletes come
Correct.
to the outside venues, which would be football,
soccer.
And then in the spring, well, we don't know. Spring, it might change to something different, but for now, that's what it would be. And everyone in Section 9, that's sort of what they're working towards, correct? Just so we fully understand. And then I know we did extensive, like you said, over 600 people, extensive training. I'm sorry, testing. What are your plans for testing in fall 2 sports?
So we're going to partner with Horizon, who's just been incredible. And, in the beginning, we had questions from families, am I going to get a copay on this? Am I going to get billed for that? And the answer is no. What if I can't pay, or my insurance only covers so many tests? Horizon eats that. We did obtain the tests through the state, and we're going to try to do that again. But Horizon is going to give them, we anticipate testing football twice a week. I think it's Monday and Wednesday. Volleyball and cheer twice a week. I believe it's Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay, thank you. And then we also got some questions, some emails for cheer. Is it the stunting is going to be included for cheer?
Yeah, so when we approved cheer for the winter,
it was different.
We approved it for sideline cheering only, and I found out later on that stunting was a possibility, and I couldn't even bring that back to the board. So I made the decision to basically say we weren't going to do that. So we would be approving both sideline as well as stunting for fall 2. Good.
Okay. That's another, I just want to make sure I'm asking these questions because I've gotten them. So I want to make sure that we all know before I'll let the rest of the board ask questions. And then I'm going to go to the questions that we received in the email. So we make sure we answer all those. So everyone has the answers to the questions, as well as it'll help the board make their decision on fall sports. And then can you please let us know what your recommendation is as it pertains to JV, varsity, and potential, or if there's potential for the modified?
So for modified, I'm proposing, I worked with Debbie Crow and would work closely with Michael on a modified intramural program to build the skills. We already missed basketball, so we're going to do basketball as well as volleyball in an intramural format. We believe that we can do that. We're not going to compete. Nobody's running modified, so if we don't have anybody to compete against, but we would have like inter-squad competitions. As far as JV for our high-risk sports, like we did for boys and girls basketball, we would carry a larger squad. So we would carry some JV players. They would dress for home, but would not necessarily travel with the team unless it was anticipated they were going to play. So we would appoint our JV coaches to work with those players during practices and things like that, but also to support the entire program through COVID protocols.
Okay. And do we have enough gym space right now for all those teams to get to practice, the inside teams and the?
So we're hoping to be outside.
Okay.
Tennis is going to be tough because I have to figure out what Nickerson will allow me to do to clear that off without voiding my warranty and damaging our brand new. We haven't even played yet. So
there's supposed to be some rain and there's supposed to be some above freezing temperatures. Thank the person above for that.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for our turf fields. We cannot take a chance of hurting our warranty on those turf fields.
Right. So I have worked with A-Turf to get their suggestions on how we can get on those fields pretty quick. And our guys spent the last 2 weeks, last 2 days shoveling what they call veins. So they went across the field about every 7 yards, and then they cut in lanes across those. So to expose some of the turf, which the green holds heat a little bit better, and so does the black. And it will cause the turf, the snow that's on the turf to melt certainly more rapidly. And again, we are getting some liquid sunshine. The prediction for the weather for the next 2 weeks is that it will be above freezing every day during the day. And I am, you said you were more cautious. I said, I'm praying for rain all weekend so that most of that snow will be gone on Monday. And the little bit that will be there, we'll work and run around. As far as juggling gym space, that's what you would deal with all spring season for the first month anyway. Okay. So that's nothing new.
And then I have view only. Viewed only both of my children's college fields, turf fields, that they did the same thing with taking off the top layers and being really careful. And it really does work. I'm telling you, it does work, and you don't touch the turf. You don't hurt the turf.
And we have looked into and are probably going to purchase a snow pusher that is not a normal plow. What it is, it won't dig in. We had somebody say, well, it doesn't brush it, but it's got a lip on it, so it can't dig into the turf.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a turf field that's been plowed? The lines aren't straight anymore because what happens is that it moves the turf. So this actually goes. Yes, this goes a little bit above that surface, so that we can get on it. It's nothing's cheap, but in the scheme of things, we could do that and actually get on the fields next year or earlier. We're not gonna shove off the Crow field right away just because that has punch list items on it. We haven't taken control of that.
We don't own it yet. Yeah. And I know that OCIAA or Section 9 or whoever it is had scheduled some games on that field. And I said to Mrs. Crow, you know what? It's on hold until we take ownership of the field and we feel that it is safe for us to play on. So she's working with them just so they know. I know it's a month or so out, but at least they know.
Yeah, and we should be on that field in a couple of weeks. I don't know that it's going to be a month or so, just because really they have to put up the goalposts. We already have the GMAX testing and all the reports on those things, so we're in good shape as far as those things. All they're waiting for now is just the punch list stuff to be approved. So they've got the poles for the lacrosse. You got they're very high poles on that field. So we got to get that. You got to get the goalposts up. As soon as we lose the snow on that, Whispering Pines can put that up in a couple of days.
That's great. That's great. And then I thought of one more question that come up a lot from the community. But before I get to the questions, I'm going to be quiet and let the rest of the board ask any questions they have on the fall sports. Go ahead, Gabe. Go ahead, Gabe. All you.
Yeah. Frank, so when you say the Section 9 is 2 spectators per student athlete, do they specify it's 2 per home student athlete at any event?
No. The section is recommending that you only allow home spectators.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are they saying 2 spectators per student athlete
per our team?
Home spectators only. That's their recommendation.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Just wanted to get some clarity on that. And would cheer be home and away, or still cheer probably home only?
A cheer will I think they're trying to schedule, according to Ms. Crow, an event in like April that we would be able to potentially compete. I guess that's the right word, because we missed the competitive cheer season. That's usually winter season, but they would be sideline cheer again. Yep.
But only for home contests?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I do want to thank everybody for the all-in attitude and the amazing success that everybody had in making the winter season successful, and it was all because of all the hard work of everybody, our nurses, our coaches, our athletic directors, our administrators, Horizon Medical, everybody, because if not, it just wouldn't have been as successful as it was. So I thank everybody for that. And it's
there is
safe is the word.
Yeah, and there is nobody doing the testing that we're doing. And
Right,
this
right.
is something that I wanted to make sure that we had for our kids, for our faculty, for our community. So,
Okay, the rest of the board?
I just want to add, Ann, to what you had just said too. Just
Sorry.
I know we're talking about fall, but with winter, as far as safe, I would add the refs to that also, because they really are calling the kids if they, if they see them pulling their masks down for either, if they're doing it routinely or if they're doing it for an extended period of time, they're getting cautioned, or they are asked to leave and get subbed out. If they need those breaks. So even the refs are really conscious of the issue of safety. In that, the only other thing that I had wanted to mention, and Frank, you had talked about the fan experience for the virtual streaming. It's been kind of neat to hear like fan rumbles and cheers and things of that nature. The only thing that I would say is as a cheer parent, I think I might be a little bit disappointed because you can't really hear the cheerleaders when they're doing that. And I think that there needs to be a little bit more awareness of that. Because they're on the other side of the gym. So when they're doing their cheers and we have the loud noise happening from the DJ booth that's next to the camera, you can't hear the cheerleaders. So that's just some feedback I would want to bring back to them.
make sure Debbie gets that. Thank
the
you.
cheerleaders can have that experience, or then their families as well. The only questions I had about the fall sport, and you kind of answered it, was in regards to snow removal for the fields.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Gus.
I have a question in regard, if I don't have a student that's participating in a sport, say football, can I still attend, or is it a limit as to the total number of spectators for that sport? Say there's 20 students playing football, does that mean only 40 spectators?
It's two per player. It's two per player.
Yeah, and we're going to be very regimented on those, so that, Gus, if you know somebody who's got a football child, they could put you on their gate list for that day. But other than that, I'm sorry, sir. You can watch it.
Yep, it'll be live streamed the best we can.
I would watch it remotely though, right?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I'm looking. Does anyone else have any questions? Ned? I think he might be on mute, is he?
Yes.
Ned, you're on mute. You would press the, okay, there you go.
Okay,
Thank you.
I got it.
Okay, cool.
Will we be competing against other schools who are not monitoring their student athletes with the testing protocols?
Yes. Just like we did in the winter.
They will be required to test, Frank, or not?
It's a best practice, but it is not required. It is a best practice.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can we find
Okay,
out?
anybody else? Or-
I have just a follow-up.
Go ahead, Ned.
Can we?
Yeah.
Can we find out in advance through the athletic directors whether the other teams will be participating in the testing program?
We certainly can reach out. I will tell you again, there is no school doing what we are doing. And
Do
I'm
you
trying to
think
have-
there's schools doing what we're going to do in the fall with the
I
2
think there
days
are
a week?
schools- I think there are schools that are looking into implementing testing protocols. I don't know that they're looking to do them with the fidelity and frequency that we have. And if it hadn't been for weather, we would have tested kids every day. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the weather got in the way of our games too. So
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's important to designate though that we're going above and beyond what the protocol suggests. So it's just I just don't want to make it sound like the other schools aren't doing anything, or, aren't following their protocols. They're just not doing it to the extent that we are.
Right. I would agree. Thank you.
Okay.
They have to be following, if they're doing high risk sports, they have to have submitted their plan to the Department of Health. So it meets the muster of the Department of Health.
Okay. And then, is it okay if I touch on the questions that came in?
Sure.
Now, the one thing that I do want to say though is, for the public that's on, I'm not going to go through the questions that pertain to the reopening because those are more appropriate to be answered at the next board meeting. This is our tenure meeting tonight. We're having this discussion about fall sports because we need to, due to the deadline of Monday to start. So, that's why that discussion had to be had tonight. And Frank, or Dr. Sheboy needed, and Mrs. Crow needed to be given a direction on the coaches so we would know if we were going forward with these sports. So that being said, if anyone submitted questions on the reopening to the reopening email, we will be sure to address those at the next board meeting. But these ones will just focus on the fall sports. So I'm going to start from the beginning. A lot of these we answered. The first two questions, and I can't see if somebody's raising their hands now because I switched over to the questions. So if you could just wait for me to be done and then we'll make sure they're answered. So the first two are from Coach Munkin, Jeff Munkin at West Point. Would the district be open to allowing parents to attend competitions if, like the student athletes, we provided a documented negative COVID test with 24 hours of competition or took an antigen test on site prior to entering the arena? We could provide insurance at the time or pay cash for the test. Socially distanced seating has been done at both outdoor and indoor stadiums around the country with great success. Perhaps we could find a way to execute the same scenario at James I. O'Neill. As I know you understand, the parents and students have been eagerly awaiting this opportunity for a season. This is especially true for the senior athletes and their parents. Some of these student athletes may be playing their last ever season of organized sports. Also, in the meeting last night, there was discussion about the athletics director in regard to basketball games being streamed for viewing, but no mention of other sports. Will the other sports, and specifically volleyball, be streamed for viewing if in fact there is no alternative for us to watch our children play? So, Dr. Sheboy, can you just, I know we addressed it, but can you just touch again on that very quickly?
Yeah, so first, in regards to the spectators, I mean, we don't have a lot of leeway on that. So we can't allow spectators for indoor sports, and we are capped at 2 currently for outside sports per student athlete. And I don't disagree with Coach Monken that there's a safe way to do things with limited capacity. And we're going to do that with the capacity that they give us, and if they give us more capacity, then we'll do it with that too. In regards to the videoing, our goal is to video our contests to the extent that we have people who can actually do it and to stream those things live. Obviously, that's imperative for volleyball since we're closed. I mean, closed to the outside spectators. As far as for football, it would be nice to do football and soccer just because we know that our community wants to see our kids play. And to the extent that we can showcase that, we're going to try our hardest to do it. So.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying those.
And can I just add one, Anne? Can I just add one thing? Just so that, especially for the senior parents, so that they're aware. I know we just had senior night for basketball, and although those parents couldn't go in to watch the game itself, Mrs. Crow did do something special for the seniors and their parents before game time. So hopefully the coach for volleyball could consider doing something similar so that the parents and the senior students can get that same experience.
Thank you. And the next one is from Danielle and Chris Dyeroff. We are writing to ask for the entire board's support for the green light for volleyball as well as other fall 2 sports. We refuse to call them high risk. We have watched the live stream games of both boys and girls basketball, and there is much, much more ball touching and actual physical contact between athletes than any volleyball match we have seen in the past. As of today, February 23rd, 2021, as far as we know, there have been 0 problems with both boys and girls basketball as well as cheer, which is a great achievement. Our COVID numbers continue to fall, and we ask you to follow the science and let the kids play. If the fields still have snow on them, then we believe then we believe they can be plowed safely. We know West Point plows Mikey Stadium. Even if they cannot be plowed, we, along with many other parents and athletes, would volunteer to clear the fields of snow just to let the kids out on the playing field. Picture below is showing synthetic fields being plowed. Thank you for your careful consideration on such an important matter for the mental and physical well-being of our children. So I honestly believe most of these, all of the Dyeroff's questions and comments have been addressed. So we talked about not being able to plow our fields, but we have been working to find ways to clear them with the snow. And we've already heard your recommendation on allowing fall 2 sports. So that one's good. Please vote. From Debbie Haley. If a student tests positive for COVID, completes isolation, and presents a medical clearance, he or she may then return to practice. However, because a person can test positive for COVID up to 90 days after exposure, how will the daily testing work? I am assuming the testers will have notice of the medical clearance. The second question is, guidance suggests that a person who has been exposed should quarantine for 10 days. If a student is exposed and the family decides to quarantine starting the day of exposure, but then later decides to test and test positive, does the start date begin on the actual date of exposure or on the test date? And how do dates of symptoms play into this? 3 is please vote to play football, and 4 is please clear the fields. So Dr. Sheboy, can you touch on the testing protocols?
Yeah, so there's a lot of that, and I appreciate that. So the first one was on a person who is post-positive COVID, and it is possible that he or she could pop another positive. That's well documented. What we would ask is that we have a copy of the notice that they had tested positive, the clearance from their physician, which, again, any high-risk student athlete has to get clearance to play sports, not just to return to school. So remember that. So, and we would have that, and if they tested, our people would know it. I did advise nurses in the buildings of this already, that this is possible. We have had, both adults and students who previously had tested positive and had, COVID, who, when we gave the tests, they did not, but everybody is a little bit different. That's the second question in regards to when a quarantine period begins for an individual who may have been exposed and later is tested. It would be, on that particular case, from the date of the test, not the date of the exposure. That's not my rule. That's the Department of Health for Orange County. In addition to that, if a person has symptoms, the first day of their symptoms is the beginning of their quarantine in that particular instance. That's why it's really important to communicate with our nurses.
Thank you very much. The next question or the next email that came in, it's from Ellie and Claire. Ellie Lemnier, I'm sorry, just because I know that, and Claire Kabelski. And we've answered their question already, but I found this to be a very well-written email, and I really appreciate the time they took to write it. So I'm just going to spend a minute reading it fast because I feel it deserves to be read. So from Ellie and Claire, we hope this email finds you well. Our names are Ellie Lemler and Claire Kabelski, and we are the senior captains of the O'Neill varsity cheerleading team. We have been a part of the cheerleading program for all 4 years of our high school career and have loved every minute. We cannot express how much O'Neill cheer means to us and how much it has changed our lives for the better. We are writing this email tonight to share our opinion on the approval of stunting that will be discussed at tomorrow's Board of Education meeting. To our disappointment, stunting was not approved for the winter season. However, we are extremely grateful to have had a season at all. Oftentimes, cheerleading is overlooked and not considered equal to other sports. We understand that stunting may not be deemed necessary to the sport of cheer, but we hope to convey in this email why we believe it is. We hope that tomorrow night you will approve stunting for the following reasons. And they sent us several very fair and well-written reasons as to why it was very important to them. So I thank them for writing that email. I think it's they took a lot of time and they did their homework, and I thank them for that. And I am glad that we as a board will be considering stunting tonight to include approval for. The next email that came in from Buddy Valco has to do with the reopening, so we will talk about that at the next meeting. The next meeting is from, the next email is from Andrea Masick, and we write to ask you to allow Fall 2 sports to play this spring 2021. We appreciate all the COVID precautions that James I. O'Neill High School and the Highland Falls Fort Montgomery Central School District have put in place to date to keep students and their families, faculty, and staff safe. And we are confident that the school district will be able to put similar precautions and health guidelines in place for the coaches, training staff, and athletes. When the fall season was postponed in 2020, our son Evan joined a local academy club soccer program that has strict COVID-19 protocols in place. They trained and competed outdoors, wore a mask prior to and after training and games, and athletes had to fill out daily health screening forms before meeting in person. When a COVID case was reported in the club shut down all activities temporarily, informed everyone, and as a result, no subsequent spread was realized. We believe that the opportunity to exercise, play outdoors, interact with peers has been a huge boost to our son's mental and physical health during this challenging time. And we've experienced firsthand that when a program takes the precautions seriously, communicates risks, and holds their coaches and players accountable, a team can train and compete safely. They then go on to share a very interesting article that talks about personal responsibility and how that limits COVID's rates of spread. And they're asking us again to please let our Fall 2 student athletes play this spring. And again, they again talk about how important it is to communicate to the athletes that if they want to play the full, albeit shortened season, they will have to take precautions and to display the social discipline on and off the field, the safety of officials, teachers, staff, coaches, trainers, players, and their respective families. And this again, and it talks about being recruited to play soccer for a college. Their son, Evan. Division I schools have now extended their COVID-19 dead period through May 31st. So I just think that it really is important. And what I respect 1,000% about this letter is how important it is for everybody to be on board. And our winter athletes were on board, and that's why it was successful. Our coaches, our teachers, our parents, they were on board. So as long as everyone understands that everyone has to be on board, everyone has to be disrupted a little bit. Maybe they can't go on with their full routine. I've talked to many parents and many athletes in the winter season, and those kids did without. They didn't go to parties. They didn't do things that they wanted to do because they wanted to be able to play sports. And if they follow the rules, we should hopefully have the same success in our fall season. So I thank them for that very detailed letter. We also have a lot of questions from Carly's Lemler that she got from the PTSC members. So they, again, the first one is thanking us for that we were able to screen the basketball games. I believe we addressed the 2 spectators per student for the winter sports. Frank, can you just touch on where she's asking when will Section 9 be holding the next vote regarding spectators?
Yeah, I honestly don't know that. I mean, I have a Chiefs meeting tomorrow. We get a report on Section 9 athletics. I honestly don't know when Section 9 will be, if they're going to vote on that. I mean, their guidelines are their guidelines, and but I'll ask Brian Monahan, who's our Section 9 superintendent rep.
Okay. And then, so I believe if I understood you correctly, just to make sure that the community understands and is clear on it, that if Section 9 gives us the go-ahead to allow 2 spectators per athlete for home competitions, that we will have the ability to do that here at O'Neill.
That's for me. Yes, absolutely. We're going to set in protocol that is as tight as it needs to be to ensure the health and safety of everybody involved. We'll have, specific tickets. We'll have a gate list. I mean, it will be tight.
Okay, thank you. And again, that goes go ahead.
And for outside
For
events
outside
only.
events
Just make
only.
sure.
I wanted
Correct.
to confirm that. Okay, thank you, Gabe, and thank you, Frank. And then, is it true that JV was not approved by the Board of Education and not recommended by the school administrators because bus funding for JV sports was used to pay for the COVID-19 testing for varsity athletes?
No, that is not true.
That is a very ridiculous statement, but I can definitely tell you that is not a true statement. So I'm hoping we can clear that up right now. We already discussed on a number of occasions, but I'll touch on it very quickly again, who is paying for the COVID-19 testing that student athletes are receiving. If they have insurance, we're putting it through insurance. If they don't have insurance, or if their insurance will not pay, Horizon Medical is eating it. We already touched with Dr. Sheboy already
correct.
explained, but I'll touch on it again. The non-high risk fall 2 sports, will they have JV and varsity teams? The non-high risk. Okay.
Yes.
The next ones we'll talk
Yeah,
about.
presuming, I'm sorry, Ann, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but presuming they have enough participants.
Presuming
I
they
know
have
that
enough
sometimes-
participants. The next ones that have to do with athletics talk about snow removal. We already touched on that. We already touched on the tennis courts. We're working on getting those cleared. Are spectators allowed at non-high risk sports outdoor competitions?
Yeah, Section 9 has the same regulations for those sports. It's about the social distancing for the fan, so it's going to be 2.
Okay. Does the whole soccer team have to quarantine if someone on the soccer team gets diagnosed with COVID?
Yes, 10-day pause.
I am trying to understand if my son plays soccer outdoors at practice at JIO and is wearing a mask, but someone on the team later tests positive that day. Since it's a low-risk sport and non-pharmaceutical interventions would use, would my student have to quarantine?
According to the Department of Health, yes.
Thank you. Related to the above question, soccer is not high risk. Why are only high risk sports being tested?
Well, anybody who wants to have their student
Why
athlete
aren't
tested can
high
do
risk
so,
sports being tested on the weekends?
because we don't have anybody from Horizon who is working on Saturdays and Sundays who could come and do that.
Thank you. Why are student athletes being required to be? I just want to add something to that. Like Faith already said, we're doing more testing than a lot of our other. I think than any of our other. Doing it 5 days a week than any of our other districts that we are competing with in winter sports. Why are student athletes being required to be tested so many days in the week? Could it be reduced?
It could have been, but winter sport is basically over now. And we did say that for fall, because we're talking mostly outdoors, 2 days a week for football, 2 days a week for volleyball and cheer.
Thank you. Why can't cheer travel to the other schools to cheer? That is part of football, having cheerleaders there.
So in conversations with Ms. Crow, we talked about the need to keep our student athletes to the extent possible from congregate settings that could ultimately lead to an exposure. The team travels, and I know that cheerleading is a vital sport for all of our programs. And maybe what we can do is try to get them more opportunities for some of our other sports besides just football. I think that may be a way to give them the greater opportunity, but having another group of students on the bus was the general reason, or on a bus was the general reason. We are sending, basically for football, it'll take 2 buses to get the team there to an away game, whereas we used to be able to send 2 buses, including cheer. So
Right.
it's not a cost issue as much as it's a need to social distance and avoid a close contact congregate setting, which could lead to greater exposure.
Thank you. What financial support does the district need from the PTSC or private donations to make high-risk sports happen? We don't, right? We can cover it with what we have.
And we do appreciate the PTSC,
Yep.
all that they're doing. They have beautiful banners that they've put out there. They're supporting our kids, supporting our school. They support our teachers. They're fantastic. But on this one, we're working closely, and we believe we've got this even using Horizon resources and our own internal resources.
Yes, so thank you for that very generous offer. The AP exam questions we'll handle at the next meeting. Carly Lemner questions. These are personal ones, not from the PTSC. For many sports, a JV team is imperative to build a program for the varsity teams and for the athletes to gain the skill they need to be successful in future years. Taking a year or season off can be detrimental to their athletic progress and team cohesiveness needed on and off the field. And for this reason, especially in preparation for competitions, to have scrimmages for teams that require large quantity of athletes for inter-squad scrimmages / practices. Is it possible for the high-risk sports to have JV and varsity, but to only travel varsity players? I believe that's what we're doing, correct?
Well, if the question is, will we have JV competitions? I know that most other schools they're not even carrying a JV team for competition. They're doing what we're doing. We're carrying a larger squad that includes some JV players, a fair number of them, and they get to practice, they get to the skills development. Some of them may travel with the team and get to suit up and play in away contests, but they'll all suit up at home contests, and that's where we are as high risk right now.
Okay. And then was it a Section 9, a school district, a high school administration, or an athletic director decision to not have the indoor cheerleaders do stunting? And I think, Dr. Sheboy, you already addressed that earlier this evening.
Yep.
The next one is asking, would the district administration athletic director be supportive of the cheerleaders having stunting for the fall 2 season? And again, that's being brought forward today. Carly mentioned, and I just want to make sure I read this to all. Thank you for all that you are doing. Thank you for approving winter high-risk sports, and thank you for finding a way to have our at-risk students get back into the school 4 days per week. And thank you for considering and taking into consideration the thoughts and concerns of parents and students. And I thank you, Carly, for all that you and your PTSC does for our students and our athletes as well. From Jenny Hartsock, our family votes in support of fall sports for football. And I'm not sure if this is sports related. It is. From Alexander Pidalev, to whom it may concern. As I'm a parent of a freshman at O'Neill, to our son, sports has been an integral part of his life. This past year has been crushing, not so much because school was called off, but because sports were unnecessarily called off. For most kids, it's pretty much straightforward. They want to socialize and compete. This is the beauty of sports, and to even considering taking this away from them yet again is simply criminal. Why would we rather have our kids in front of screens and gadgets than running around and partaking in healthy activities? Don't you all realize that the damage of not having sports options is many times worse than having sports? Why are we not talking about depression, mental anguish, and suicidal tendencies amongst our kids? Does this not matter? Suddenly only COVID matters? Please, I implore you, let's stop the theatrics and get on with our lives. This is not a pandemic we are dealing with. I'll remind you, it's a virus. So why are we even considering canceling sports? I understand there are parents who are panicking and don't feel comfortable about having their kids partake. So let's make it optional and let the skeptics stay home. Won't that solve problems for everyone? If that isn't enough, let's sign waivers, but please do not hold our children hostage anymore. You've done enough damage already. And I would like to personally respond to that. I'm sorry if you as a community member are not happy with what we are doing as a school board and as a school district, but I take offense to much of what was said in there, that you think that we're holding kids hostage and that we're not focusing on depression and mental health, because there isn't a person on this call right now that doesn't work on that every single day for our students, no matter what level they're in, pre-K all the way up to our seniors. So please understand that we're making sure our students are safe, and most important thing, we're following the rules and regulations that are put upon us by the state, by the Orange County Department of Health, and also our Section 9 and our OCIAA official I guess officials, should I say, that give us our direction. So I don't feel there's anything else to be added to that. From Holly West, good
And
evening. I have a couple.
What was the name of that individual?
That person is
Pose
from
that question.
Mr. Alexander Pitaloff. And I'm sorry if I'm not saying your last name correctly, sir. I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Our next questions are from Mrs. Holly West. Good evening. I have a couple of questions for this evening's meeting. The school ones we'll discuss next meeting, but for the sports ones, when will a decision be made for fans at outdoor sporting events? And we already touched on that, but I just want to make sure that you understand that we're waiting for direction from Section 9, but we are able to put their recommendations in place if they vote to allow us to do so. And will the fields be cleared by Monday? If not, has a request been made to West Point for assistance? We're hoping that the sunshine, the rain, and the warm weather helps us, as we described earlier. We've made some moves on the field down below. We will work on it. We'll continue to work on it, but we also are going to take the necessary precautions not to damage the fields as they exist today. So I think I answered those questions fairly. Dr. Sheboy?
They are correct. I would just specify that as of today, Section 9 is permitting 2 spectators per outside venue.
That's good to know. So we will be working towards making that happen.
Yeah, we just have to put in place our system to register people ahead of time and all that, just to make sure, a gate list, so to speak, like you would have if you were somebody going to a game, a board member or somebody. So yep. Okay.
And then I just want to make sure real quickly, give me a minute. Kristen Dyeroff has a number of questions about the return to school. And there's really nothing in here. I think that we need to talk about these all at the next meeting. Just to make sure that we, okay, I think we can address all of Kristen Dyaroff's comments and questions at the next meeting because they pertain to the return to school, the HFIS playground, and things like that. So hopefully by next week, the playgrounds will be cleared anyway, or on their way, that's for sure. Another question came in from Carly's about sports. If a student tests positive on Monday, but played a sport on Saturday with his soccer team, does the team who was at practice on Saturday have to quarantine if the students didn't test positive until Monday?
That is one of my favorite Stump the Epidemiologist questions. I
know.
will throw that one right at the Department of Health.
Okay.
The rule of thumb that they use is typically 48 hours. So if somebody was with somebody who less than 48 hours later tests positive, the answer would be yes. And I'm saying typically because I would throw this one at the Department of Health for a very specific answer. But typically, if it is more than 48 hours, the answer would be no. But that is that's my Stump the Epidemiologist question of the day.
Okay. Carlise, I don't know if you want to follow that one up with the county or ask Mrs. Crowe if she can follow that one up for you, just to make sure you get your answer on that.
And I have I can send that right to our conduit there. So
thank you very much. So Carlise will let you know when we have an answer on that one. Oh, here we go. Dr. Theodore, thank you. I was going to ask if there's any others. Okay, from Kyle West. Will the school provide football players with the masks designated for football helmets? And I know Mrs. Crowe is not available tonight. I think, Kyle, that we might need to get back to you on that one once Dr. Sheboy or Mrs. Brand can ask Coach Crowe.
Yeah, we'll get back to Kyle on that one. Just the simple answer is that we'll provide whatever required PPE that we have to for our student athletes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Dr. Theodore, are there any more?
We should try to do that as the student asked.
I think that they did for in the winter, so I can't imagine us not doing it in the fall, but I think we need to, I just want to confirm that, but I'm sure we will. So Dr. Theodore, are there any more questions?
No, there are no more questions.
At this time. Okay, so two things I want to touch on quick. One is I thank everybody for their questions. I know it's very frustrating having to submit your questions via an email. The governor has extended the open meetings law through, I believe it's March 16th at this time. Correct, Marissa? March 24th? March 24th. Okay, which we will revisit it at that time. I do understand we're just as frustrated with everyone, meeting at home and not having the ability to come out and speak and talk. However, we need to keep our board members safe too. And we need to give them the ability to participate if they don't feel safe coming to a meeting. Also, right now, we can have everybody come in and put in their questions and put it in this way where if we go back in person, we're also going to have to limit how many people can attend a meeting. And that's going to be difficult. So we want to set it up with the least bit of constraints when we do go back to having our meetings in public and in person. We're also waiting for the state to come down with direction for us, how we can allow board members or participants to continue to participate online or whatever ways that people feel safest. So we're all working on that behind the scenes. I've attended a lot of seminars and meetings where I hear it being discussed. But right now, we're working our hardest to keep all of our board members safe and continue to thank them for all their hard work. So I know Gabe, Gus, and I don't know, Gabe had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to get clarity on the JV situation. So there's no JV for high risk or low risk. The sports that are going to play are going to carry larger than normal squads, trying to include as many of the younger players in the development for practices and for home contests. But then the coaches will decide which players travel to the away contest.
No, there will be JV for soccer. That's the only moderate or low risk, and I believe tennis if we have enough student athletes, just not the higher risk.
Gotcha. Yep. And we hope that there's other teams to play at that level.
Correct, and that is the big hope, which is why whenever we were considering, I frequently would be texting Coach Crow when she was at section meetings and talking about what is our goal, what can we authorize, what will we authorize. For example, volleyball and some of these other sports, there are no JV teams to play, or people said, well, we didn't do anything with modified. Well, again, my goal now is to do something with modified, but people didn't put out modified support. So they were concentrating on getting their student athletes who are probably at their last, bite at the apple, so to speak, the opportunity to, to practice, compete, and carrying larger teams to develop, continue to develop student athletes. JV is largely developmental still. It's varsity is your most competitive, but to still provide that developmental experience for some of our student athletes. So
great, thank you.
Gus, did you have a question, Gus?
No.
No? Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or questions on this? Okay. Before we move on, I was just sadly informed by Mrs. Pitt that a former board member has passed away yesterday, Jim Dunlop. He served on the board for many years. And I'd like to ask everybody, and he was a very nice man, a hard worker from our community. So I'd like to ask everybody if we could just have a moment of silence for Mr. Dunlop. Okay, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Mrs. Pitt, for informing us of this sad news. Thank you. So now we should go on to our agenda, Dr. Sheboy? Okay, I know this is a little bit of a different format of the meeting. That's why I keep on asking. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sedera.
Okay, I'm going to try talking over the dogs. Hold on a
Do you want
second.
me to do it, Denise? Do you want me to do it?
Do you mind?
No, I don't mind at all. I don't mind at all. Hold on, please.
and I can do it too. I have it right here.
I have it on my other computer, so I can try to be on. Okay, here we go. So the action items, Frank, are going to be separate. I'm going to read that one separate from the consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Resolution to authorize participation in higher risk Fall 2 sports. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves participation for grades 9 through 12 students and 7th and 8th grade students to the extent that they qualify through the athletic placement process in the following higher risk Fall 2 sports, subject to parents, legal guardians, and students signing the code of conduct and informed consent form in the presence of school officials and strict adherence to the guidelines and protocols established by state and local authorities, as well as the rules of Section 9 of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. Varsity football, varsity volleyball, varsity cheerleading. And be it further resolved that the board hereby directs the superintendent to arrange for COVID-19 testing for student athletes and coaches as a condition of participation in the above referenced sports. May I please get a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed?
I would
Okay.
like to just say that I feel it is very important that we insist on the adversary team going through the testing process. Otherwise, it totally defeats the purpose that we're trying to do by testing of our staff and athletes.
So noted. Marissa, you got that? Thank you.
Is Ned a yay or a nay?
What?
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure of your vote, Ned, if you were a yes or a no. I just want to make sure it's clear for the record.
I said
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, I thought so. We have no nays. Okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming. Next, establish modified intramural athletics program. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby establishes a developmental modified intramural sports program for students in 7th and 8th grades for basketball and volleyball, subject to strict adherence to the guidelines and protocols of the state and local health authorities. May I please get a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, approve the,
And I can read this.
you're
Do you want
okay
me
now?
to read it, Ann?
Okay, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, they're outside for 5 minutes, so. Consent agenda. Use of the consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. Any member of the board who wishes to discuss individually a particular piece of business on the consent agenda may so indicate, and that item will be considered and voted on separately, thus reserving the right of all board members to be heard on any issue. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following consent agenda as submitted by the superintendent of schools, number 2 through 6.
Motion.
Motion. Second.
With regard to number 3,
I'm sorry, Ned, number 3?
number approval of the proposal for services from BCA that
Yeah.
refers to study of further future construction at the Fort Montgomery School. There was a provision in there for survey services. I feel strongly that we should not have the survey entity dictated to us. There are surveyors, and this, and particularly in Putnam County, world-class survey and engineer in the firm of Beatty and Watson. At least there should be communication between and these other entities who might be interested in providing a service.
Was this discussed? I believe this was discussed at the meeting, at the facilities meeting.
I was
Not the provision of surveyors specifically, and
Okay.
that was not.
Is this the one they used for the high school?
They do their own internal surveying there.
So this is their
Yeah,
survey?
I believe it's the same group, or they have their own, yes. Now, again, I can take that to Scott and ask if,
No, this was a different name. This was a different name,
Okay.
Frank.
Well, it says
and again,
Bernier, Carr and Associates, engineers, architects, and land surveyors, PC, known as BCA.
right.
So it's the same company?
I believe BCA did the survey last time. They had their own.
Yeah, I think they have their own people in-house, Frank.
So if to me, if they're doing it in-house, I don't see how we could ask I'm fine with them doing it in-house. I don't know, Gabe, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's fine.
I mean, Ned, I see what you're saying, but if they're doing it in-house, And it looks
What's
like,
the difference? What's the difference if they're doing it in-house?
because they're not adding any money to the,
Look at the thing. It says over
they're,
$5,000.
if they,
Separate. That was a separate cost above the 20,000, as I read it.
well, you know what? I mean, let's get answers on this. But I don't see that, but I might not be I read it and I don't understand where Ned's speaking of. So let's give everybody time to see that 5,000. I just saw all the services that they would do for the $20,000. But I don't see where it says separate the 5,000. So I'll have to go back and find that. But regardless, Dr. Sheboy, can you go back and ask them if they're even willing to do that? Ask somebody else to do the survey part of it?
Sure, I can, and we can pull it until, because remember, we have a business meeting next week.
They don't.
Yeah, let's pull it. Go ahead, Ned.
They don't have to. They don't have to accept from an entity such as I'm suggesting, but at least communicate and and make a decision together with the board and the administration of whether it's in our interest to have independent do that.
But where, I don't see the does someone help me? Does anyone see the $5,000 in here?
No.
I saw it was all included in the $20,000. The direct expenses,
I don't see it either, but
the salary cost, the authorization.
When I went through it on the computer, the iPad last night, that's what I saw.
All right. Well, if you could point that out to Frank for him to go back to them, because I think for everything that they're doing and what they've done already for the $20,000, I think that that's a very reasonable price. I'd hate to, obviously, if we're going to tell them that we didn't want them to do any surveys, that would go down a little bit, but I'm not sure how much it would go up if we asked another firm to come in that isn't part of this agreement to be doing that work for us. So if you can look into that, Frank, I would appreciate it. Or Denise, anybody.
yeah, I definitely can. And I did do a search through the document just now for the term 5,000. It does not pop, but that doesn't mean it.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be somewhere else. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
I have
ahead,
a
Gus.
question, in terms of a clarification as to where the actual construction will take place, that remains to be seen based on the recommendations of BCA, whether or not it will be done at the Fort School or whether or not it will be done at the elementary school.
Well, let me explain something to you, Gus, what the process is. So in the very near future, probably within the next week or so, the facilities committee as it exists with its members has to make a recommendation to the board for us to put on the May ballot to create a capital reserve fund. Until that capital reserve fund is approved, there's no discussion on what would be done and where. Because number one, we don't know how much that we'll be able to put in there. That's number one. And number two is, until there can't be any discussion on what's going to be done until the fund is set up. So while they brought some ideas and threw ideas out to the facilities committee, it has nothing really to do with that at this point until we get that capital reserve fund approved. Okay, so they wouldn't be proceeding with doing the work that Ned is talking about anyway. But I understand the importance of having it in there. But they wouldn't be talking about that until after that is brought to the public and see if they approve. And that would be that's the next step with this whole process. So we're not even ready to start talking about what they're recommending and where they're recommending it and what we want them to look into. It's way, way, way too early for that.
Okay, so let's get the
Okay.
fund, hopefully we can get the approval from the taxpayers to fund the.
To
capital-
create
To create the.
a
the
new
fund.
capital reserve.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. Okay, and then from that point on, we'll.
Then you
depend
go on to the
right.
next step.
Okay, all
Right.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure we explained that in public tonight so people understood. Okay. So we're going to table this number 3, please. So can I get a motion and a second to remove number 3?
Motion.
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
Yeah.
carries. Okay, let's remove number 3. And then, so may I get a motion to approve 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, please? I'm sorry, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And I just want to very quickly touch on the letter of accept the resignation for the purpose of retirement from Ms. Jean Lambesi, a longstanding teacher in our district. And we look forward to celebrating her retirement later on in the year. But I did just want to point that out. We thank her for all her dedication to our students and our community. So thank you, Ms. Lambesi. Okay. Now, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the purpose of discussion of the employment history of particular individuals, candidates for tenure. The board will not be returning to open session to take action.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and I thank everybody for joining tonight from the public, and we'll pick our discussions up next week at our next meeting. So thank you, everybody.